this is ethical to report that much information about those people? And do you think that Singapore will change the rules to media? Thank you.
I don't know whether Patrick should answer that question or I should answer that question.
The question is directed to you, Minister. I do have a view, of course.
I share your sentiment as an individual. I mean, if I were to look at the pictures, the names being flashed, if that happened to be one of my friends, I mean, I'd be very, very unhappy on the implications on the family. I do not know any of them. Okay, I have to clarify that first. But I suppose looking at what has happened in terms of the fact that this is an ongoing case, it's been made public, they go appeal to court, you can't prevent the newspaper from not reporting it. Sorry, you can't, right? Because that's what newspapers are supposed to do, that's what media is supposed to do. So it is still ongoing, I can't comment further. In terms of the coverage, I think we will leave it to the best judgment of the media providers to decide. So far I can say there's no need for Mika to call the various agencies to tone it down. But I think good sense has prevailed and will continue to prevail on the part of the media that this story, big as it is, has certain implications down the road for families and what have you, basically. So that would be my take on the matter at this point in time. I would like to defer to Patrick if he wants to add further.
I shall be happy to add. The question that you pose, what is it that makes this case different from all the crimes that we have been reporting ever since we started, publishing newspapers? If you are charged for theft or for wife beating or whatever, they also have families. They also have children. So if I extend what you say, then by right, every crime, you should not identify the criminal because he too has a family. So, the question I ask is, what makes this case different? Now, there are many people who have told me that actually they feel quite sympathetic to the men because they just didn't know the age. That was their mistake, To which my answer is that, there is a law. The law protects women below the age of 18, makes it a crime for the men to have sex with sex workers below the age of 18. And the AG has decided to prosecute all 48 of them. How can the press not report that? We have to report it. Should we not mention their names and where they are from? If we do that, then why stop there? That we should stop reporting all crime because they too have children. All manner of crimes, wife beating, maid beating, all kinds of crime. So we're newspapers, we have to report them, I feel sad that people have to put, blue buckets on their head and run down the streets, But, if you think about it, I don't mean to be moralistic about it, but, if we don't report this, are we doing right by all the women and all the other men who live moral lives? There must be some penalty for not living a moral life. And if you get charged, tough. You have to take it on the chin. So the gentlemen who walked into the court, sort of with their heads straight, and didn't run and hide behind surgical masks, they have my respect. They just took it on the chin. They say they made a mistake, and life goes on, and we'll go on. We're not going to hound them forever. Right? So we're just doing our jobs. So you mentioned the Straits Times. I will defend the Straits Times. I have defended the Straits Times. many times in the last few weeks. Nothing to be ashamed of.
My name is Lai Kit, former journalist, now in public relations. It may be a bit sensitive, but anecdotal evidence and discussions with my friends suggest that sites such as Temasek Review, the Online Citizen, and I'm not for one moment suggesting that they're accurate, are gathering some cachet among the younger people and the internet savvy. First question is, how concerned are you that there is a growing divide between these sites and what these sites refer to as mainstream media, which is the current print and broadcast, that whatever is said mainstream media is being cited as that's what they are saying, but we don't really believe it. That seems to be what I'm picking up. That's the first question. Second, we've just seen the Prime Minister having a Facebook page. Can you give us your insights from the government or the BAP's view? What are the overarching internet cyberspace strategies which you are adopting? Thank you.
Second question is a secret, right? It's a strategy. Why would I give it away to the opposition? But I think the straight answer is that we cannot ignore the online media. PM took a long time to decide that he should go on Facebook, and I think he has made a wise move with a lot of the preparation. As I mentioned in my speech, all government ministries now have some presence online. We've in fact trying to move the bar slightly higher for them to have certain specific presence in certain areas. As to the individuals, the ministries, the ministers and members of parliament, this is again best left to them to decide. But some of them are very active. They have a huge online following. They discuss, they engage, some of them block. So my sense is that, as I mentioned in my speech, it will evolve over time, but we cannot ignore the online media altogether, and how do we engage it? As a government, we are rolling out our so-called online comms plans. That is known by a lot of people, but the specifics, I think I will not go into the details because every ministry is very different. There's some baseline, but each ministry will have to be fighting it in a different level or engaging it in a different level because the issues are different. Obviously, between, let's say, the Ministry of Environment and Water and Ministry of Law, very different focus, very different sort of challenges in terms of trying to communicate. One is climate change, flooding, the other one is law. So we have to leave it to the domain expert to decide on the sort of the modalities. But in terms of the presence, I think this is something in which the government will continue to push. Your first question, obviously, as I mentioned in my speech, we see an upside to the internet, and we want the internet to continue to grow as a platform for constructive, serious discussion and exchanges. But again, you cannot just stop a site just because you disagree with it. I think the best approach is really to allow other sites to emerge, and we hope there are more sites that can emerge, that can continue to offer constructive ideas and views and suggestions for the people to read. It's really a buffet, in the sense that what is being offered there, people will read. If there are no good online sites or platforms that offer good views, people will naturally gravitate to the ones that are popular and one that's available. So really it's up to the online community to decide. But having said that, apart from the two that you have mentioned, there are other very good sites, including ST Online, Yahoo, and all the other sites which are already available out there that offer very, very good offerings for the internet community. And I think this is something in which, again, we cannot prescribe. Right? On the one hand, we have to continue to, as I say, regulate with a light touch. The laws that I mentioned earlier, we will have to look at it very carefully. But overall, I think the development is best left to the internet community to decide what exactly that they want, what is it that they think they want to offer. I mean, it's like pornography. It's always been there from day one, right? And we never shut down the internet because of the pornography, but we build up the resilience and the defenses. So I think to a large extent, for me at least, if you ask me, if there are more sites available that offer even alternative views, but as long as they're constructive, they're rational, they're done objectively, based on proper analysis, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, to disagree with the government is not a crime, right? You can come out and say, I disagree with transport policy, I disagree with the way you manage the flood, or whatever the case may be. But let's put it on a rational, objective footing, based on data, based on your own analysis, and the government has never shied away from that. And that is something which we look forward to, so that the internet community can add to the discourse and to the discussion. And I think that's what PM also mentioned in his National Day rally last year, that we want serious discussion, online so that we can add to the ongoing discussion of key issues and policies and what have you. So I think that's the reality that we have to accept, and we hope that space will continue to grow. The government will continue to play that part by providing our own version. So if you look at some of the websites and the Facebook run by the ministries, it has changed a lot since the last election. But really, we need also the other voices to come forward. I mean, I've not cited some of the data, but there are a lot of people out there who go onto the internet looking for views, but some of them have decided that they may also want to contribute to that discussion. Based on their own analysis of what is offered out there is really not very healthy. Let me offer a different view altogether. And we've seen that coming out on stream because we monitor the online community very closely.
So just wanted to pick up one point you made, which is many of the people who read some of these sites obviously don't trust the quote-unquote mainstream media. But I'm glad that, Minister, you cited the surveys which show that,
yes,
I think it was 65%.
Yes.
65% of people trust the media, as opposed to about 40% in the US and UK. But what it also means is that 35% don't trust the media, 65% trust it. So I suppose the 35% who don't trust the media would read the other sides and say that we're all talking rubbish. But my view is that, well, they're entitled to their opinion. We track that very closely, this particular survey about the believability and the trust in the mainstream media. So far, it's been held quite steady at that level. I suppose we would like it to go higher, but we take 65%. If that's what the trust level is. So long as the majority of our readers believe us, some won't. What to do?
But just to add to what Patrick has mentioned, I mentioned in my speech briefly that info literacy and media literacy is something that we take very seriously. I've mentioned this in Parliament. In fact, it was mentioned by my MOS, Mr. Chan Chu Sing, that we are going in a big way to try and build up info literacy skills and media literacy skills in our population. So we're working closely with the Ministry of Education, ensuring that our kids, when they see on the internet, whether they believe it or not, they must have some way in terms of criticizing it and analyzing it. And we're also going into the adult population, because our data shows it's just not young people who are naive. There are people who are also adults. That 35% that you mentioned may not have a clearer understanding of what is it they're reading on the internet. So really, at the end of the day, this has to be a concerted effort to ensure that people have the right skills to go on and understand what they are reading and reading it critically so that they can make an assessment whether it's right or wrong. I think that's what we can do as government, and this is what we'll do in the next few years.